The way she said it, calm, almost bored, made me question whether I was overreacting or finally seeing something I'd been ignoring for too long. Emily Carter didn't raise her voice. She didn't defend herself. She just smiled slightly and said, "It's nothing serious, just harmless flirting." And somehow, that made it worse. We lived in a quiet neighborhood in Greenwich, Connecticut, where everything looked stable from the outside. Perfect lawns, even more perfect marriages. At least, that's what people believed. I'm Daniel Whitmore, and for years, I believed it too. Emily and I met at a charity event in Manhattan. She wore a navy silk dress, and she had this confidence that didn't need attention. It commanded it without asking. I remember thinking she wasn't like anyone else in the room. And for a long time, I convinced myself that meant she was different in the right way. We built a life that looked right. A modern house with wide glass windows. 2 cars in the driveway. Dinner parties with people who all spoke the same polished language about success, investments, and schools. But somewhere between the dinners and the silence that followed them, something shifted. It started subtly. Emily would laugh a little longer when she was on her phone. She would tilt her screen away, not dramatically, just enough to make it noticeable. She began staying late after work more often, always with a reason that sounded reasonable on its own. Client dinner, team drinks, networking event. Individually, they made sense. Together, they felt like a pattern. I didn't say anything at first, because when something feels off, the hardest part isn't confronting it. It's admitting to yourself that it might be real. Then came the night that made everything impossible to ignore. We were at a private gathering hosted by Nolan Prescott, the kind of event where everyone dresses just slightly better than necessary, just to remind each other where they stand. Emily stood near the bar, talking to a man I didn't recognize. Tall, confident, the kind of man who knew exactly how close to stand without being told. I watched from across the room. Her hand brushed his arm. Not once, not accidentally, twice. She leaned in when she laughed. He didn't step back, and the look on her face, it wasn't inappropriate. It was worse. It was comfortable, like she had done this before. I told myself not to jump to conclusions, that maybe I was reading too much into it. But when I walked over, she didn't introduce me immediately. There was a pause, a small one, but long enough. "This is Daniel," she said eventually. No title, no Williams, just my name. The man nodded, extending his hand. Ethan Caldwell. His grip was firm, his eyes steady, too steady. And then Emily added, almost casually, "We work together sometimes." Sometimes. That word stayed with me longer than the conversation did. That night, on the drive home, the silence between us felt heavier than any argument we had ever had. I finally asked, "Who is he?" She didn't hesitate. "Just someone from work. Doesn't look like just someone." That's when she turned her head slightly, not fully facing me, and said the line that would stay in my head for weeks. "It's nothing serious, just harmless flirting. Before we go further, tell me honestly, if you were in my position, would you accept that explanation, or would something inside you refuse to let it go?" I didn't respond right away, because part of me wanted to believe her, and part of me already didn't. The next few days were quiet. Too quiet. Emily acted normal, maybe even more attentive than usual. She asked about my day. She cooked dinner twice that week. It felt like an effort, and that made it feel less real. I started noticing things I had ignored before. Her phone was always face down now. Notifications were silent. She smiled at messages, but never explained them. And then there was Ethan. His name appeared once on her screen. Just once. But once is all it takes. I didn't confront her immediately. Instead, I watched. Not because I wanted to control her, but because I needed to understand what was actually happening. A week later, she said she had another late meeting. I nodded. Of course. But this time, I didn't stay home. I drove past her office building an hour later. Her car wasn't there. That was the moment something inside me shifted. Not anger. Not yet. Clarity. I didn't call her. I didn't text. I just went home and sat in the living room, staring at the reflection of the city lights in the glass windows we once thought were beautiful. When she walked in 2 hours later, she looked composed. Not rushed. Not guilty. Just prepared. "How was your meeting?" I asked. "Long," she said. That was it. One word. And suddenly, I realized something I hadn't allowed myself to think before. This wasn't about flirting anymore. This was about honesty. Your car wasn't at the office, I said. She froze, just for a second. Then she exhaled. I didn't think you'd check. That sentence told me more than anything else could have. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse her. I just asked, "So what is it, Emily?" She looked at me for a long moment. And for the first time since this started, she didn't try to soften it. "I like the attention," she said. There was no apology in her voice, just honesty. "It makes me feel seen." That word hit harder than anything else. Seen, as if everything we built together had somehow made her invisible. And that's when I understood the real conflict wasn't between me and Ethan. It was between who she was becoming and what we had been. "I never said it meant anything more," she added quietly. But by then, I realized something important. Meaning doesn't always come from intention. Sometimes it comes from impact. Days passed. We didn't separate. We didn't pretend everything was fine either. We existed in this strange middle ground where nothing was resolved, but nothing was ignored. Emily became more distant. Not physically, emotionally, and I stopped asking questions. Because I already had the answers. One evening, as we sat across from each other at dinner, I asked her one final thing. "If it's harmless, why hide it?" She didn't respond immediately. Then she said, almost under her breath, "Because I knew it wouldn't feel harmless to you." And that was it. That was the truth neither of us had said out loud. It wasn't harmless. It just wasn't serious to her. A few weeks later, we made a decision. Not dramatic, not explosive, just necessary. We agreed to separate. No shouting, no blam. Just two people acknowledging that something fundamental had shifted. And sometimes, once that shift happens, you can't move back to where you were. Before we end, think about this. At what point does something harmless stop being harmless? Is it when trust starts to fade, or when honesty does? I never hated Emily, and I don't think she ever intended to hurt me. But intention doesn't protect a relationship. Awareness does. And once you become aware of something, you can't pretend you don't see it anymore.